President Joe Biden has fled Washington, D.C. to hole up at his Delaware mansion for an extended weekend, even as multiple crises engulf his administration. Biden left the White House before noon on Friday, hours before the Pentagon held a late afternoon briefing to reveal that U.S. forces had badly botched a drone strike in Kabul, killing 10 innocent civilians. Meanwhile, as the day unfolded, France recalled its ambassador to the U.S. in outrage over the new AUKUS security pact. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration rejected Biden's call for widespread COVID booster shots, and a squalid camp of 12,000 Haitian migrants continued to grow near the border in Texas. The Secret Service dropped Biden off at his mansion in Rehoboth Beach at 1:37 p.m., and he plans to spend the weekend there with the First Lady, with no events on his public schedule. DailyMail.com has reached out to the White House for comment. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki has said in the past that presidents never fully go on vacation, noting that Biden travels with a national security aide and gets regularly briefed when he is out of the White House. Before skipping town to get an early jump on the weekend, Biden did work from the Oval Office in the morning, convening a forum on climate change and receiving his daily intelligence briefing. Fox's Sean Hannity criticized Biden's commitment to the nation on Friday by deciding to go to the beach while the U.S. deals with an influx of immigrants from Haiti, the ongoing problems in Afghanistan and the fallout between America and France over the Australian nuclear submarine deal. Someone in the administration needs to remind Joe that he's the President of the United States, he needs to get off his A** and get to work, Hannity said. If he's too weak and frail and slow to handle the job 7 days a week, he should step down and retire because right now there are serious crises on multiple fronts. Hours after Biden arrived in Rehoboth Beach, the Pentagon made a stunning and embarrassing reversal, admitting that the August 29 drone strike in Kabul killed an innocent aid worker and 9 of his family members, including 7 children. Our investigation now concludes that the strike was a tragic mistake, said the head of U.S.Central Command, Marine Corps General Frank McKenzie. Hannity criticized the operation, saying, "Did you get that, Joe? Your over-the-horizon drone strike killed 7 innocent children. Joe Biden has blood on his hands." U.S. officials had for weeks defended the botched strike, with Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark A.Milley calling it righteous when pressed on civilian casualties. Then, a dramatic and unprecedented diplomatic crisis erupted between France and the United States, with Paris recalling its top envoy in Washington, D.C. for the first time in history. France was the first country to formally recognize the United States government with a treaty in 1778, and the two republics have long had close and friendly diplomatic relations. But the French government is furious with the new security pact between Australia, the US and the UK, which saw Canberra cancel a $90 billion submarine contract with Paris. Instead of French conventional diesel-electric submarines, Australia will now pursue nuclear-powered subs through the trilateral security pact known as AUKUS. Ambassador Philippe Etienne tweeted, "The AUKUS arrangements are directly affecting the vision we have of our alliances, of our partnerships and of the importance of the Indo-Pacific for Europe. It was really a stab in the back. We built a relationship of trust with Australia, and this trust was betrayed," said French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian. This is not done between allies. French officials also cancelled a gala planned for Friday night in D.C., intended to celebrate the French Navy's aid to America's fight for independence in 1781. In another embarrassing blow to the administration, an FDA panel announced that it would not recommend COVID booster shots for the general population, after Biden had spent weeks vowing to begin administering boosters on September 20. An FDA advisory panel voted on Friday to recommend COVID-19 vaccine booster shots only for Americans 65 and older and those at high risk of severe illness, after overwhelmingly rejecting a call for broader approval. Biden, who stoked the ire of FDA officials before announcing a mass booster campaign before the plan had regulatory approval, had touted the imminent start of COVID boosters as recently as a few days ago. The White House attempted to put a positive spin on the FDA decision, framing it as one step in the march toward universal boosters. Today was an important step forward in providing better protection to Americans from COVID-19, White House spokesperson Kevin Munoz said. We stand ready to provide booster shots to eligible Americans once the process concludes at the end of next week, he said. The FDA is expected to make its final decision on the third round of shots soon. It is not bound by the panel's recommendation, but it is highly unlikely to break with it. Finally, at the border in Texas, shocking scenes of human misery unfolded as a surge of 12,000 migrants, mostly from Haiti, gathered in a huge camp seeking asylum in the U.S. Many of them did not come directly from Haiti, but had been living in South America for years. Reports suggest the surge came after word got out that the Biden administration would not deport Haitians who enter the country illegally, following an earthquake in that country. Thousands of Haitians have been wading daily across the Rio Grande at Del Rio, Texas, arriving faster than they can be processed and detained. In the sweltering heat, they have set up camp under the International Bridge, waiting to be processed by U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. The camp, where food and water are in short supply, now equates to a third of the population of Del Rio. The city's Democratic mayor issued a public appeal on Friday, calling the situation a nuclear bomb alarm that is no longer sustainable. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced he was sending National Guard troops and officers with the Texas Department of Public Safety to the state's ports of entry to deter crossings as he compared the migrant crisis to the chaotic withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan. The Biden administration is in complete disarray and is handling the border crisis as badly as the evacuation from Afghanistan, he said. Countdown to death, minute by minute, how the Pentagon meticulously tracked innocent aid worker in Kabul before killing him and 7 children with a Hellfire missile in catastrophic intelligence failure. The Pentagon has finally admitted that it killed an innocent aid worker and 7 children in a bungled drone strike, marking a disastrous intelligence failure for the Biden administration. A detailed timeline released by the Pentagon on Friday, when compared against prior reporting on how aid worker Zamari Ahmadi spent his day in Kabul on August 29, reveals the mistaken assumptions and tremendous errors that led up to the disaster. Ahmadi, 43, worked for U.S.-based aid group Nutrition and Education International, and U.S. officials now admit he appears to have had no connection to ISIS-K terrorists. His fatal mistake, it appears, was driving a white 1996 Toyota Corolla, in the wake of a suicide attack that killed 13 U.S. troops at the Kabul airport. U.S. officials had intelligence that just such a vehicle was involved in planning another attack. Marine Gen. Frank McKenzie, head of U.S.Central Command, said at a briefing on Friday afternoon. The following account is based on the timeline that McKenzie provided as well as prior reporting on Ahmadi's movements in the hours leading up to the drone strike, some of which comes from the New York Times. On the morning of August 29, Ahmadi left the compound near the Kabul airport where he lived with his children, 2 brothers and nieces and nephews. On his way to work, Ahmadi picked up a co-worker to carpool, before stopping at the home of NICE director at 8:52 a.m. to pick up a laptop. The director's home had been under intense surveillance by MQ-9 Reaper drones, and McKenzie continues to insist that solid intelligence links the home to ISIS-K. However, a Times reporter visited the NICE director at his home, and met with members of his family, who said they had been living there for 40 years. We have nothing to do with terrorism or ISIS, said the director, who also has a U.S. resettlement case. We love America, we want to go there. Seeing the white Corolla that matched intelligence reports visiting the supposedly suspicious home, U.S. officials latched on to the vehicle, tracking its every move. Everything they saw seemed to feed into their false theory that they were tracking a terrorist. At 9:05 a.m., Ahmadi picked up a second co-worker not far from the director's home, and the three of them rode together to the NE offices a few miles south. At 9:35 a.m., Ahmadi and his two co-workers arrived at the offices of NE, a California-based non-profit that promotes the cultivation of soy crops in Afghanistan. The Pentagon believed the offices to be another suspicious compound. Drone surveillance captured Ahmadi and his colleagues unloading bags and jugs once they arrived at the office, likely referring to empty water jugs that Ahmadi filled at work to bring home to his family. A few hours later, at 11:22 a.m., Ahmadi and some co-workers left the offices and drove to the 10th District Police Station, which was controlled by the Taliban, to request permission to distribute food to displaced Afghans in a park. McKenzie says that at around the same time, U.S. forces received a sensitive intelligence collection indicating that an ISIS-K cell leader in Kabul was dropping off supplies, and apparently jumped to conclusions connecting the information to Ahmadi. Ahmadi and his colleagues arrived at the police station at 12:11 p.m. and stayed for about an hour, leaving to return to the NE office at 1:27 p.m., Ahmadi spent the afternoon at the non-profit offices, and as he prepared to go home for the day, filled up several large jugs with water from a hose to take home, as water service in his neighborhood had been cut. Witnesses helped him load the jugs, and surveillance video shows that they were filled with water, but the Pentagon believed it was witnessing bombs being loaded for an imminent attack. At 3:47 p.m., Ahmadi departed the office with three co-workers, giving them a ride home. They later told the Times that it was a normal commute, filled with laughing banter and jokes. The one difference from normal was that Ahmadi did not turn on his car radio to listen to pop music as he usually did, for fear of running afoul of the Taliban's harsh restrictions. At 4:11 p.m. Ahmadi dropped off his first colleague, then made two additional stops to drop off the others. The Pentagon noticed with alarm that the final drop-off, at 4:39 p.m., was just blocks away from the supposed ISIS-K compound where surveillance on the car was first initiated. At 4:51 p.m., Ahmadi arrived home and began backing his car into the gated courtyard. A gaggle of children, nieces and nephews, ran outside to greet him. Ahmadi's home is roughly 3 kilometers from Kabul airport, where U.S. forces were holed up attempting an evacuation, and where a suicide attack had killed hundreds of Afghans and 13 Americans on August 26. "We were very concerned that the vehicle could move quickly and be at the airport boundary in a matter of moments," McKenzie said. As the children greeted Ahmadi, his adult cousin Nasser walked outside to help him bring the water jugs inside. U.S. forces immediately assessed Nasser to be a co-conspirator and launched the strike, claiming that they did not see children in the area. A Hellfire missile detonated inside the Corolla at 4:53 p.m. Killed were Ahmadi and three of his children, Zamir, 20, Faisal, 16, and Farzad, 10, Ahmadi's cousin Nasser, 30, three of Ahmadi's nephews, Arwan, 7, Benjamin, 6, and Hayat, 2, and two 3-year-old girls, Malika and Samaya. The Pentagon initially claimed that a secondary explosion proved that the Corolla was carrying explosive materials. McKenzie admitted on Friday that the missile likely ignited a propane tank near the car, which created a large fireball spotted on drone surveillance. McKenzie claimed that upon review of the drone footage, a few partially obscured forms were briefly visible moving in the compound. The strike was a tragic mistake, McKenzie said. McKenzie apologized for the error and said the United States is considering making reparation payments to the family of the victims. "I am now convinced that as many as 10 civilians, including up to 7 children, were tragically killed in that strike.